Hello, and welcome to English with Mrs. Smith, the channel designed to help you achieve your true potential in English. Whether you're simply looking for ways to enhance your skills in English, or if you're putting together a coursework folder, or preparing for final exams, English with Mrs. Smith is here to help by providing essential tools, top tips, and simple tried and tested techniques to improve the quality of your written responses and enable you to gain more marks. In this video, we're going to be identifying my top 10 tips to write great narrative, visiting each item briefly to create a useful checklist of strategies and ingredients. Further details and examples for several of these topics are explored in additional tutorials from this series, and some of those are listed later in this video. Right now, let's get started on our top 10 tips to write great narrative. Tip number 1 is select a frame. We all feel we have an exciting story to tell, but with the designated word count of coursework or the time constraints of the exam, even Charles Dickens would be challenged to produce a masterpiece. So tip number 1 is to recognise that this is not the platform for producing a great novel, but rather it's an opportunity to spotlight one sequence, one exciting scene from the movie. Possibly the opening pages, introducing a dramatic setting with a mysterious character involved in something intriguing, or perhaps the climactic moments of a great struggle or chase. Now, even though your focus is on one exclusive episode, your narrative still needs structure. Tip number 2 is shape the tale. Build your narrative shape by constructing 4 or 5 parts which link together. Begin with the opening or introduction. Keep it quite brief. Next, rising action. A situation which arises to create tension or maybe a challenge. You can even throw in a complication. Have your protagonist, your main character, involved in an accident or give them an injury. But if time's limited, you might want to skip this bit. The climax or turning point is essential. You can compose 2 or 3 paragraphs for this part to highlight the drama or suspense. And of course, you need to close with a resolution. You have to know how your story is going to end and make it good. We'll look at great ways to close a little later. Tip number 3 is think about genre. You might be inspired to write a particular type of tale, such as an adventure or a fantasy. A fairy tale maybe, or a murder mystery, a ghost story, or science fiction. If so, take a moment to recall characteristics of the genre, a particular opening style, when and where the action generally takes place, the types of characters associated with this sort of story. These components may help you fit together the pieces of your narrative. Selecting to write in a particular genre will certainly link with tip number 4, which is all about setting. Before launching into your narrative, it's best to have a clear sense of when and where the action takes place. Let's start with when. So, you have an inspirational idea for your tale. Ask yourself when it should be set. During daylight hours? On a sunny summer's day? Perhaps a dark, gloomy night would create the ideal atmosphere. Historical fiction could provide a battleground backdrop or a medieval fantasy. The season might be significant. Is yours a chilling, wintry tale, or is it bursting with the promise of spring? The time you select should impact the atmosphere of your narrative, so be clear about when the action occurs. Another hot tip about time in your narrative: keep it tight. Avoid that temptation to leap forwards or backwards in your tale, or at least limit the shift to a minimum. Instead, increase tension and suspense, or simply add to the sense of realism by allowing the action to unfold in real time. That's the time it takes your audience to read the story. Try restricting the time frame of your narrative and notice the difference. Setting is also about where the action occurs. Again, avoid shifting between different locations and select a specific place to accommodate your narrative. It could be a mighty forest or on board a boat swept out to sea. You might set your story on a remote desert island or in a bustling railway station or inside an old abandoned house. Choose the place that suits your tale. We've reached tip number 5, and this one is super simple but really effective. Limit the number of characters in your narrative. It is possible to create a gripping tale with only one character, although it may seem easier to feature 2 figures, especially if you want to generate tension between them. No matter how many colourful and charismatic figures you can imagine, tip number 5 is to create your narrative around 2 and no more than 3 characters. Moving on to tip number 6, find your hook. How are you going to lure your reader from the start? Your opening needs to snag their attention. So how do you hook their interest? How do you open with flourish? Here are some favourite options for openings. Open in the middle of the action, in media res. It could be a fight, a disagreement, somebody in the middle of doing something extraordinary. Open in the middle of this and do not give an explanation. Let your reader wonder. Similarly, open in the middle of a dialogue, a conversation without context, which will only make complete sense later in the narrative. Any intrigue or mystery is likely to gain attention. Some terrified figure fleeing through a dense forest, or a lone character digging a hole in the middle of the night to bury an unidentified bundle. Perhaps open with a shrill scream or a deafening roar of an explosion. Remember, your goal is to create questions, not confusion. Alternatively, open by generating atmosphere with a description of setting, especially if it seems perilous and intimidating. Or focus on your main character and the traits which are most extraordinary or remarkable, so that your reader becomes curious. Why not open with a thought-provoking question or statement? How could anything possibly go wrong? Simply bear in mind, your objective is to create or generate questions, not confusion. Which leads very neatly into tip number 7, magical 7, show, not tell. Some of the best storytellers are like magicians. They demonstrate the illusion, but never explain the trick. Show the action, show the setting, the situation. Resist the urge to explain. Let your narrative gradually reveal relevant clues so that your reader can piece them together to deduce the truth. That figure fleeing through the forest could be an escaped convict, a fugitive from justice, or someone desperate to find medical help for an injured friend after a camping accident. The possibilities are almost endless, so let your readers use their imagination. Tip number 8. A great way to inject life and rhythm into any narrative is to feature a little dialogue. But make it meaningful. It must have impact. A discussion that generates intrigue or reflects tension between characters or reveals something extraordinary. Let the reader listen in to a private conversation. One character may be bullying or threatening another. They might be sharing secrets or planning a daring escapade. It could even be the voice of someone's thoughts, reflecting on a dilemma or battling with their conscience. Tip number 9 is all about closing. Don't let your narrative stagger to a stop. This is the final impression on your reader. So close with a punch. Close with intent. You might love the cliffhanger ending. Leave your character in a perilous predicament so your reader is desperate to know what happens next. Or an open ending. That also leaves some uncertainty. For example, in that moment, he knew what he had to do. Or, as the phone began to ring, they finally understood. An unexpected or ironic twist is always popular. Maybe the apparent victim was actually the villain, or that dead body was only pillows stuffed in a sleeping bag. We all like a twist. That twist could be revealed through a final piece of dialogue. Someone, maybe unintentionally, discloses the truth. Narrative can also close by returning to the opening lines. This is called a cyclical structure. It's not the easiest option, but it can be very effective. The reader realizes that the action ends where it began, giving a satisfying sense of completion. Of course, you can close with a finality, a symbolic exit, a death, a separation. Try using a combination of some of these options. Final tip, number 10. Pay attention to technical details. Vary your sentence types to add interest for your reader. Nobody enjoys a narrative composed entirely of simple statements. Diversify your punctuation. Mix in a few questions. Sprinkle in some semicolons. Insert inverted commas for dialogue. Season with commas and apostrophes as needed. Use clear blocks of paragraphs to build your narrative, each with a specific topic sentence to signal the next installment of the tale. You can find further tutorials linked to spelling, punctuation and grammar on this channel. Check out all about punctuation and sentence types, or try the easy steps to using the colon and semicolon, and how to use dialogue and direct speech. Composition or imaginative writing generally provides the option to write a narrative or a description. 7 strategies for sensational description provides essential guidance to improve the quality and impact of your descriptive writing in just 7 simple steps. Please remember to use the comments box below to share your feedback and to let me know if there's a topic you would like to see here. In the meantime, if you found this tutorial helpful, please give me the thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe. It's completely free, and ring the bell to stay up to date with every future video tutorial. Thank you for joining our global classroom. Welcome to English with Mrs. Smith.